Yo, guys, and welcome to another episode of the EEG podcast, The Life of an Amateur. Me, your host, Zazel, here as always. And of course, we've got our fantastic guest, Kieran from Horizon Union. We've got him on as our guest today. Bro, welcome on.
Hello, everyone. How you doing, mate?
I'm fantastic. I'm fantastic. How have you been?
Good. Busy, but life's good, so can't really say much more about that.
Well, you know, a good busy is always good. You don't want any of that faff being busy
Facts.
with stuff you don't want to do because it just brings down the morale. But getting into this, Kieran, the floor is all yours, mate. Tell us a little bit about you, what drives you, work, gaming. The floor is yours. Tell us a bit about you.
Yeah, no, for sure. So my name's Kieran, depending on what the intro is did, but essentially I'm 24. I'm from the UK. I've been pretty much an avid, if not passionate gamer my entire life, in simple terms. I work for a company called Karos Media as an account manager, which is pretty much everything gaming. So my entire life revolves around gaming, and then more so around kind of why I'm on here as well. At the same time, with Horizon, I am one of the owners of Horizon. At the same time, if the logo and what I'm wearing at the moment doesn't give away too much of it, but yeah, essentially that's me in a nutshell. I'm pretty much a fully committed gamer, working in the gaming industry, both professionally and with a brand. And then yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Well, I very much need one of those hoodies. If you got any spare ones and a cheeky XL, send that my way. That'd be great. But we'll leave that for. What'd you say?
Might have one or two. I'll have to check the inventory.
All right, okay, that's a great way to start the podcast. But continue on with speaking about Horizon. You spoke about, obviously, you're the owner. Are you the only owner? You're with Will, of course.
Will is a business partner / also co-owner of Horizon.
Okay, so how did Horizon start? Like, where does it stem from? Where's all the roots come from?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, if most people were around in the Call of Duty community back from like 2010 all the way up to now, that's where you'll most likely know it. It used to be a trick shotting team back in the day. That was the nature of it. I wasn't actually in Horizon at the time. I was very much like doing my own thing. I was in another team outside of Horizon. And then it was around 2015 that 2014, 2015, I ended up joining. I was running it with someone else at the time. Very much the same gig, but it got to a point where we stopped it. Essentially, we're looking at kind of like how everything was evolving across time with like content, YouTube, all these social media platforms that were coming on, and essentially like more the content creator route. And I kind of got bored of Call of Duty, as in like the trick shotting scene and stuff. It wasn't my thing anymore, and so we decided to rebuild it in 2017 with just completely new branding, new creators, new vision, new idea, new kind of selling point for everything that we do. And essentially from 2017 all the way up until now, it's been a growing curve essentially of kind of learning how to run your own business on a daily basis and kind of like adapting as well to an industry that changes every day with new things that come into play, with new socials, with new creators and whatever can be thrown at your way. So it's that's a little bit of like background wise. Horizon's been very much like around for like nearly a decade or so. But the actual Horizon of today that most people will be aware of has been from 2017 onwards, essentially.
So it's had like you. So from like around 2015, it's everything from 2015 has had your touch. It's had your eyes on it. Everything that's gone out has been essentially from you. So you mentioned about the sniping days, and when I think of like sniping back then, I'm thinking of FaZe. Is that kind of where it stems from as well, that type of thing?
Yeah, pretty much that was the gig. So FaZe, Sword, Dare, Horizon, there were a bunch of other teams that were around as well at the same time. Era, who's one of the teams that's still around today. There's a bunch of us back in the day, but when Horizon was going, I was actually in a team called Dare. At that point, that was the team that I got into as a video editor. That's how I kind of started in the gaming industry, and then gradually built up, leadership skills, I guess, over time, to the point where then I pretty much had a level of ownership of Dare.
Oh wow!
And then it kind of just went back and forth in that regards. I spent a lot of time there and then switched to Horizon. Like I wasn't one of those that kind of hopped between teams. I was very much committed with what I was doing. So I was only ever in two teams at some point. And then yeah, so that's kind of where I got most of my backing in gaming. That's where my passion kind of grew. I did YouTube as a kid as well. I started, I had a passion for kind of just making videos using a flip camera or something, or just doing video editing and editing people's content. So that's how I got in. And essentially, kind of over time, you grow, you learn new things, and essentially, that's we're here today, pretty much.
Well, yeah, it's good to get a little insight into that. Obviously, fast forward, we're now in 2021. But going back to like that 2015, when you sat there, you're like, right, okay, I'm gonna make the big decisions now. Where you are now with Horizon, is this where you wanted to be, or back then did you have a different vision? Like, how has it evolved over the last like 5 or 6 years?
It's it's a bit mad. To be fair, like 2015, Horizon was back in its old thing. It wasn't then. It was 2017 when we really kicked off
Mm.
everything. But like the kind of reevaluation process of it was more so like, are we actually enjoying what we're doing essentially at the time, and does it work and does it make sense? And it was a big decision in the context that we were actually like actively leaving our roots in terms from an audience perspective, which could be quite damaging to some degree. But you have to make risky moves to kind of get to a new place and to new levels essentially. And truthfully, like I was probably about 18 at the time. I had never owned another business before. I had never really done anything from a business. My background, like education wise, doesn't go in business at all. It's far from it. um so I kind of said, screw it, let's give it a go and see what happens, and kind of just built it over time, and just kind of got the pleasure of meeting plenty of creators, plenty of partners, of graphic designers, editors, and just took it day by day. And essentially, over the course of like a year, 2 years, you start to like notice patterns. You start to kind of build on relationships. You start to understand a little bit more of like how processes work. And to answer your question, no, I didn't think I would get to this point. And like to me, this point is still very, very early. It's nowhere near like where I want to be at all. But it's part of the learning curve essentially. You do something you've never done before, you kind of go all in, and then you see how it works. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, if it doesn't. But right now it's working, so that's the only thing that we're taking from it. And now it's the how do we make it better question that comes into play.
Of course, and looking back then, looking back now, like obviously I've been following Horizon probably for just over a year, probably coming on like the radar type thing, and like you've grown so much in that time, so it's exciting to be a part of that as a content creator, and then going forward in the upcoming months and hopefully years, it's going to be really exciting. Talking in the upcoming months and years, obviously I know you can't say too much, but you know where do you want to see Horizon go? Like, where would you be at a point? Obviously, it could be that there's never a point where you're completely happy of where you want to be with Horizon, but where do you want to take it in the next couple of years?
I generally like, for me, there's a couple of things. Like I want it to be the best version of the brand that it can be, essentially being recognized in the UK, Europe, globally, whatever it may be. Um, it will happen at some point. I don't know when,
Love that.
but like
Love
the
that.
work that goes in will happen. Um, but I do see it as also, a foundation for a lot of opportunities from a creator perspective, to, partnerships, to kind of having a kind of pillar point in the industry in some capacity or another. Ideally, that's the vision of it, is to kind of see it get to that level where it's compared to some of the top people in the industry at the moment. It's a long road and it's a big vision, but there's means to get there. And at the end of the day, you take it day by day and you plan ahead, and essentially you get there in the end. So um, making it as big as possible, working hand in hand with some of the best creators that are on their respective platforms, and making Horizon a kind of global household name would be a long term vision.
100%. In terms of, you say you want to be up there in like the big leagues, recognized globally. Is there any other potential, not necessarily org owners, but people that have like inspired you to, do what you do with Horizon and maybe potentially make decisions, pursue certain avenues? Is there anyone in that kind of realm that has inspired you or provided with you, like, they've done something you're like, "Do you know what, I like that, I'll take that on board."
I don't know if there's been like that many inspirations in the industry specifically. I've got like my own inspirations like outside, but I have always been very much a kind of do it myself, go getter type individual. When I say do it myself, I mean more so like I've been actively trying to like problem solution type of scenario. Um, I saw what of other teams are doing, the likes of FaZe and where they're at now, and I thought that that was cool and whatnot, and that got me into kind of the industry in a sense. But general inspirations, people like Gary V have probably been like the ones that have like got me into this and kind of get me programmed in a way that's like work ethic, mentality, stability, foundation, kind of growing and learning about it. But truthfully, I haven't. If I have got someone that inspires me, I typically only take like the best value of what they give and then I go and do it myself. I don't have the tendency to kind of, sit back, listen for, hours on end, or I have to listen to every day to kind of motivate me. Like just hearing something that will do enough, like, impact. And then that for me, it's like, okay, I've got my substance and I'll go ahead and do it myself. So, um, there's a few, but like I don't tend to, actively listen to them too much once I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, you spoke about Gary Vee. He definitely does have that set that he was almost like an aura, isn't it? Some of the stuff he says, it does just stick with you. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the term magpieing, but I feel like a lot of people have like magpied off him where they've taken something that he said or an idea and they've evolved it into their own and been very successful with it. I feel like that's what a lot of people like. No, you're copying. It's like no, there's that sense of if you see an idea, you take it, you change three things about it to make it
Yeah,
your own type thing.
everyone's different, right? And you learn in different ways. So like for me, the way that it worked for me was literally just like all I needed was a couple of words of like how things should do. So like thinking long term, working fast in the micro, learning to develop, learning to appreciate people, being empathetic, etc. Like those kind of key core skills, not necessarily of like how do you build a business, but more so of like the attributes that you should have when building a business. um those were far more like valuable to me. So that's the only things that that I retain a lot. Again, I learn a lot from like what other people are doing around me, but like I kind of manifest it in my own way.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there, and I love the way you go about it. I really do. And talking about manifesting, looking to be successful. Horizon, very Horizon Union, I should say the full name, very successful org, and a lot more success to come. If you were talking to yourself, 5-6 years ago, when this interest, maybe even longer, when this interest sprung, as well as other people, how do you run a successful org? What do you think are like the fundamentals to, putting yourself in good stead?
It's always what's a weird when we're getting asked this, because it's like I don't think a lot of people understand the implications of like what it takes to kind of run your own thing. And don't get me wrong, like this is not me saying Horizon's like macro compared to everything else, but the very key principles still remain the same. But um, work ethic for one. You can't really lose the ball at any time. You've got to be available. You've got to be capable, and also being able to understand that you're probably going to fail a lot more than you are going to succeed at first. Um, that was probably one of the better points to open with, but appreciating and accepting failures. Um, I think there's too much of a mentality of like, whenever you're starting your own project, that you have to get everything right the first time. And you're essentially siloing out yourself in terms of like trying to become successful after. Um, you got to learn, like, if you mess up, that it's okay, essentially. And you're going to learn far more after you failed than, if you were going to be hitting 100% perfect record. And there's been multiple times of Horizon that has happened in the past. There'll probably be more times in the future that will happen, and you kind of just have to take on the chin. But work ethic, accepting failure, and a mentality as well. At the end of the day, like you have to understand the implications of like what comes of it. There's a lot of sacrifices. There are going to be points where you are going to feel lonely. There are going to be points where you have to choose one or the other, and it depends on your passion and how invested you are. So having a very well programmed mentality in terms of like understanding what the implications are to kind of make it work are also very important. But those would be the three things I'd probably say. There's obviously far more that plays into it, but like just from a key principle for me, those are kind of the three things that work for me the most.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, really. And I like the thing that you said about like, just accepting that failure is absolutely fine. It happens. And I feel like that's very important to get across because you get a lot of people that want to run orgs. They get inspired by orgs in their successful stage. When you look at it, 100 Thieves, you look at Optic, you look at FaZe, they've all had those 1,000 failures before they had that one
Everyone
success.
has.
Yeah, 100%. And a lot of people don't see that. They come across them when they're in a successful stage and they get inspired by that. But you hit the nail on the head with that. These failures occur so much more often before you start seeing successes happen a lot more. And you hit that perfectly. If these failures happen, you get people that are just younger and younger going for it and putting their all into potentially, owning, running an org and trying to run it the right way. Like, how do you like recover? Is that where the mentality comes into it in terms of recovering from those failures and pushing forward?
You just have to accept it. You just have to accept and reflect. That's you have to understand that if something's not going to work and it doesn't work for whatever reason, you have to, well, one, have a couple of contingencies. It never hurts, even if you fail, to still have a couple of backup plans and ways of being able to execute differently. But if not, mainly, reflecting on why did it go wrong, understanding, the key learnings behind the project and why something, didn't work the way that it should. Like, you should always be doing, as an owner or as someone that works actively for an org, you should always be self-reflecting constantly in regards to like what your approach is to, running an org, and whether the decisions that you're making are objectively for the benefit of the org, or whether you're doing something that essentially isn't correct, which ultimately leads to you, missing the mark to some degree. So acceptance for one, reflection for two, and then kind of taking that reflection and then, sort of transitioning into another better project that will come in the near future and making it work that way.
Yeah, I love how you speak about reflection there. Like with my degree in sports psychology, I went over a lot of like reflection. That's what a lot of like the modules are based on, and it's something that before uni I never really brought into it, but now it's so much in my mindset. It's in so much of what I do. Every bit of content that goes out from me, every decision I make, reflection is always something that I force myself to do to try and improve. And I feel like it's a tool that should be utilized by everyone in everything, because it's so important to come to terms with and just be honest that, right, that failed, but how can next time I make that be successful? And it's a tool that hopefully the people watching this can hopefully take on, because I feel like it's a massive one, definitely, for seeing where you've gone wrong and
Yeah, most people
improving.
don't. Most people don't do it enough. That's the problem. I think most people are very easy to blame other criteria in a situation when you fail, and would not really blame themselves for it. And that's kind of where you go wrong in most situations. Now, whether that's running an org or being a creator, again, these are probably more like self reflections of like generally how that would work as like an org owner. At the end of the day, whatever decision you make has some kind of impact one way or another on the people within the org, or the clients that you're working with, or anyone that's working as an employee for the company. But it's same thing as a creator. It's everything that you do is your own doing, and it's no one else that's telling you to do it. If you're not getting viewers, or if you're not getting, your content's not hitting the mark, that's on you. That's not on anyone else. So it's people don't do it enough. And I think it's one thing that they need to understand, especially when doing bigger projects, that's always it should always be a way of like kind of learning a bit more about yourself as well, and what works well and what doesn't.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I can't even add to that. You really did. You did smash that one out there. We're talking about reflection and how maybe I use it. I'm a streamer. I'm a content creator, and obviously I know you've probably picked up and let go tens, I don't know, maybe even 100 content creators over your time with
God knows how many at this
Horizon.
point.
Probably some difficult decisions, probably some that are very easy. Some creators really fit the bill, some don't so much. What's your advice to streamers and content creators that are looking to join an org like Horizon Union? Because I did so much and I put the effort in, and thankfully you gave me the opportunity. What would you say to these people and these creators, streamers that are, they're trying to knock on the door, they're trying to get an answer, and get picked up by a well-established, successful org that can hopefully benefit and bring that mutual benefit?
There's a lot that goes into it. It's so much. There's so many complexities, and at the same time, it's simple. But whenever we look for someone, or whenever we kind of like break it down as to like what a value exchange looks like, you're looking at the personality of the individual. One, like do they match the kind of brand culture that you're trying to build? Do the way they act and the way that they present themselves represent the values, the core values as the brand stand for in the long term? So that's one. The content, and I mean like this this probably speaks for itself. I probably won't even need to add too much, but at the end of the day, we are looking for creators that are going to have some kind of contribution content wise that's going to make sense, and at the same time is going to be entertaining for not only their own respective audience, but also with a mix of different creators in what we try to build our audience as well. So content for two, again, like work ethic, personal brand, attention to detail, like the creators are purposefully building their own brand because they either want to make it big, they want to be able to make a full-time living off of it, or they just want to do it for the sake of just purposefully entertaining people, an audience. So there's always like their own key aspirations as to what they want to do it, but building a personal brand across everything is equally as important to everything else. It's not just the content. If you're siloing yourself off into one direction and being fairly one-dimensional when you've got all of these like social media platforms at hand, you're working, against. You're not working at everything in your favor, essentially. So personal brand would be three. How are you utilizing that? How is that working well for you? How is that helping you to grow? And then more so for me, like personally, is I tend to ask everyone that we ever work with, like objectively, what are they trying to do? I think it's a question that most times you probably end up being in a position where most creators don't actually have like an actual question apart from I want to hit partner or I want to do this full time. But I'm always intrigued to know like what a creator's actual like aspirations are in regards to like what they do from a content creation point of view, whether that's being able to give back in some way, whether it's like using this as a means to help people, using this as a means to entertain, and also be able to give themselves some kind of liberty of doing their own thing, or whether it's to do like making it full time, etc. Like I am always intrigued to know why they started it and what kind of drives them to do it as well. And that's something that out of those four probably is one of like the top ones for me, purely because that's going to tell me whether someone is actually a good fit or not for the org.
Yeah, it's a good, it's good. It's well, for me, obviously, I'm already with Horizon Union, but obviously, someone that's outside, it's always good to understand how they can, make themselves come across as the right fit. Obviously, every org is different. Every org is looking for something, else to, the differential in terms of like org on org and stuff like that. But like streamers and content creators, there's so many that just join the org, and I feel like for the wrong reason. There's a lot of streamers and content that they'll join just because they're like, right, okay, I've joined Horizon. I've got it in my bio now, like give me likes or give me impressions or give me more recognition. Do you feel like that is something that definitely has to be drowned out, and you have to, if you're joining an org, be prepared to put in the work, provide the content for the org to use and stuff like that?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say provide the org with the content, right? But I would say like, you do have when joining an org, and I'm not speaking about Horizon specifically, but just generally, there is, some level of responsibility around being able to represent, to brand yourself, to contributing, to participating where you can. They're all part of the implications of joining something, right? It all kind of sits in one big bubble of like what expectations you have. There's other things like also the numbers as well. Like, I didn't really mention it in the key points before, but like, numbers is also an important thing when you're building and scaling an org. Um, so you say impressions and comments, like I do dismiss those a little bit, but you have to also take it into consideration more from like an objective business point of view, and like how everyone's performing at the same time. But you join an org with the purpose of growing yourself and growing with the org. It's not, a one-way street. And I think people are a bit too, linear in the way that they approach it because they think that I've joined an org, I've done it, I've made it. Let me just like chill out now and do my own thing and then
Mm,
whatnot. That's not the way that it works. It's a two-way street. So you have to be ready that when you are joining an org for whatever reason that it is, or whether it's a goal or a target or just that you've been given an opportunity, that you are helping out in your own way as much as they are going to be helping you in their own ways. So it's a relationship. It's a healthy, long lasting relationship that you just need to kind of make work with what you've got and like what everyone has to offer.
yeah, I literally, the word that came into my head was marriage before you mentioned it as well. So I'm glad that you went down that route with it. Going back to the numbers, and I hear, there's so many streamers. I've given that advice because I class myself as an experienced streamer now, clocking on what, over 3 years now with properly streaming 4 or 5 days a week, even while at uni as well, and now moving into like potential like employment and stuff like that with streaming. Um, numbers, and it's such, everyone's like eggshells around it, when in fact, everyone's like, don't think about the numbers, just enjoy yourself. And in that sense, yes, enjoy your sense, but enjoy yourself. But numbers are so incredibly important. And I don't know if you've come across this a lot, maybe because I know you stream as well when you can. But numbers are very important, but do you feel like a lot of people shouldn't focus on them that much, but still keep the importance of them in their mind?
Listen, where I work, professionally and what I do, I have to dissect numbers most of the time and how things are going to perform. I think, you know, th- from a content creator perspective, if you are going in with the statement of, wanting to make it full time, and the only thing that you're going in there with is more from like, don't think about the numbers, it's an entertainment point of view, and that's it, there's going to be less chances of you growing at a rate that you want to. Um, and that's just the kind of simple, statement around it. Purely because the numbers are there to be able to give you some kind of, look into how you're doing and how you're performing, and also give you an idea of like how you could be projecting or how you can be setting yourself targets and goals and how you could be doing better. There's you're doing your average streams, you're looking at the amount of people that have come into the streams, you're looking at like what your peaks were, you're looking at like the hours that have been watched, and like all of these numbers accumulate to like, being able to gain brand partnerships, to be able to sell yourself, to be able to kind of give more context around the community that you have and you're growing. So to say that, you're not looking, don't look at the numbers, to me is a little bit naive and ignorant as a creator.
Hmm.
Even at like at a micro stage, you need to be kind of like looking and be able to kind of dissect like how can I be doing better, and especially if you're going full time, going partner and whatnot, and that's what you want to be doing. If you're not breaking down how you could be doing better, then you're not really going to grow at the rate that you want. I don't mean that no one's going to grow because of the fact that they're not looking at the numbers, but I do think that it's just you're going to be at a disadvantage if you don't take advantage of the tools that are put in front of you. Because essentially, I not even Horizon, but like working professionally as us at the same time. Like, if someone's gonna look at creators or influencers or whatnot, like the approach is gonna be like, what kind of numbers are they pulling? How's their personal brand fit together? Like, these are kind of like pieces of criteria that come into play, and people need to understand that there's a lot more behind the actual industry itself around dissecting performance of creators, monthly, weekly, yearly, whatever it may be, that just play hand in hand into your own success. And if you don't use that, then you might be 2, 3, 4 years late. And if you do use it, you never know what might happen. You might be able to be a bit more structured, a little bit more organized in your approach, a little bit more focused and tunnel vision in terms of like where you want to be in 3 months or in 6 months or in a year. Like, it's it's being able to break it down and understanding like what it actually means to be a content creator. Now, I say that for those that are going hardcore, right? Like someone like me is just streaming like here and there and doing my own thing. Like, I don't need to worry about like the numbers and stuff because that's not my main key point to kind of worry about. But if you're full time, you need to start thinking about these type of things, especially if you're going to be working with brands.
100%. And bringing reflection back into it as well. Especially myself, especially in the last, since I went like full time last year, like last May of 2020. Like, what I would do every stream, I would just pull up my stream summary and just dissect it, look at the hours, look at the minutes, what's the unique viewers, who tuned in, where my viewership's coming from, can I push certain areas to maybe pull people. For example, like, I really started pushing like TikTok and stuff like that because it was such a great avenue for new people to come by the stream. It was the biggest, like nothing came close to that amount of truckload of people really going from TikTok to Twitch. It was really easy for them, and I've never seen it so much. Maybe like YouTube Shorts, I've had a few more come through as well. But looking at the numbers, seeing where it's going well. If it's going well, then it's always good to
You
locate
have
that.
you have to be very open in the way that you do it. Like, don't get me wrong, it is you have to do it in a way that's constructive and that's also going to kind of take advantage of like being able to be critical with yourself. There's a lot of people that a lot of creators that will look at the numbers and will be very demoralized by seeing numbers if like there's an underperformance on one day compared to another performance on the other. So, when you do look at numbers, you want to be doing it in a very constructive way of breaking it down and being able to say to yourself and reflect to yourself if you've done well on a particular day. Was it because of the content? Was it because of the style that I took? Was it the game? Was it the fact that, it was a Tuesday rather than a Thursday? Was it the time that I streamed? There's going to be multiple factors that come into play with it, but you want to always keep it very constructive and very kind of like open in the way that you actually analyze and dissect the way that you do things. And it's the same thing of like you're using, any social platforms. And if you're not doing this already and monopolizing on just like the game at the moment, which is, YouTube Shorts, TikTok,
The
um,
move at the
you know,
moment, the move.
yeah, to some degree, even LinkedIn, if you want to go as far as saying that, but like, VOD content, live streaming, using every single angle of monetization plus, viewership that will drive and funnel more content, not only to your personal brand, but also people to your main sort of broadcasting platform, then you're not really working hard enough as a
Mm,
creator, truthfully. And that's the simple reality of it. And that's why, I always say like mentality and work ethic, because at the end of the day, it's how much you want it. So, um, there's a things to take into consideration when you're like looking at numbers. Don't be the person that, you see a bad number and you start being upset by it. See it as like, okay, how can I do better?
100, well, 100%. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with how you like constructed that little segment there. Utilizing as many avenues as you can, more rising your content, the better. If you put it onto, if one short goes massive, 100,000 people watch it, and you get 1% of that, you're doing very, very well. It's more rising your content. Word of mouth as well. That's very huge. People might promote you on their socials. It's kind of like a chain, isn't it? Once that chain reaction happens and you start doing well externally from streaming, and you start like the TikToks, the shorts, and LinkedIn. That's something I've not explored because I kind of keep that for the other side of like my life with like my football coaching and the way I want to go with that maybe one day as well, and connecting
LinkedIn's
with.
far out, by the way. Like, it's not really a means for a platform now, but I'm just using it as a principle of like being
Hmm.
able to use multiple platforms simultaneously will only lead to more viewership and more content.
Yeah, 100. On LinkedIn, I follow a lot of people that are in the esports industry, and it's good to see how it all works on that side. The very, very professional Facebook, shall we say, as a lot of people say it is. But we'll put that to one side. I feel like we dived into that really nicely, and you speak so well about it. With how I can only imagine people that are watching it are like, oh, okay, do you know what? He's really hit the nail on the head there, and hopefully they'll take a lot of it in. But moving on to talk about professional life and you, Kairos Media. Hopefully, I'm saying it right. Kairos Media. I mean, I hope
Yeah,
I'm
you're
saying
good.
it right.
You're good.
Tell us a little bit about your role with them, what you do, and the floor's all yours.
Yeah, no, for sure. To give a bit of context, Kairos Media or Kairos Group is essentially a creative-led agency that operates in UK and also in the US. It is an agency that is basically backboned and rooted from the gaming industry, working hand in hand with influencers, and has scaled massively across the years. Essentially, we work with some of the biggest brands in the world: KFC Gaming, LG, JBL, Facebook. So it is a globally known agency as far as it goes. Myself and like kind of where I sit in it, I work as an account manager, specifically working on two separate accounts essentially, handling pretty much like specific gaming strategies. So I've been with them for about a year and 4 or 5 months, I believe now. And I basically work hand in hand with influencers all around the world. I uh, lead strategies based on like gaming activations that we do with series of influencers. I run ambassador programs with like large scale influencers. Pretty much a lot of the stuff that you see kind of a day to day with like influencers and like um whatnot that have like brand partnerships, etc. Like I work hand in hand with some of these brands as well through Karos. So it's very much a gaming orientated position, working professionally in the industry, both with like influencers and esports, but it is very much part, of a much wider kind of project of making it as big as possible in regards to like an agency in the UK and in the US. So it's um it's a fairly good dynamic, and it's also probably partly quite a lot of the reasons as well that Horizon's also doing very well. There's well, going back to reflection, right? But working in the gaming industry professionally, for the last year and a half has like accelerated my understanding of like how the actual gaming industry works, from like a more of a marketing, advertising, creative, social perspective. And that's kind of, kind of jumped back towards Horizon in some capacity as well, and the approach and the vision, the strategy. So, the professional life mixes very well with like the personal and the business life at the same time, which creates a very much a unified kind of look into it, into like, what potential success could be there, and seeing, how we can kind of manifest that. But um yeah, Kairos is an ever growing agency. Essentially, it's going, probably to the moon, like some people will probably say. But it is, very much a pillar in the gaming world, essentially, as far as like delivering, some of the best campaigns that people have seen so far. So
Yeah, I mean, I've been following Chorus Media for a long, not very in depth, but kind of like I'd probably say maybe 4, 5 years. Like I remember the days of Fear Crads kind of came out of it on Twitter. That's how like I kind of remember it. And then obviously I found out about
that's mad.
I found out about like Horizon, and then obviously I found out that you obviously were the owner, and then I saw that you worked for them. I was like, oh my god, like I remember them, like back in the day, like when he was if he was starting it up or he was going to work for them, because obviously I knew him from like COD and stuff like that.
He's still going. He owns it.
Yeah, like that's how like I've known about it for so long. Not I didn't take like a massive interest in it. I'd always followed Fear Crads for I still follow him now for years. And then obviously coming across Horizon, coming across you, and then I saw I was like, oh my god. And then I did more digging. I was like,
Yeah,
they're
full
huge
360.
now. And I
Full
was like,
360. Yeah.
yeah, I was like, wow, full circle. It's just happened right there. And then is it, with the job you're in with the account manager with, is that always something you look to go into, or is it an opportunity that just arose and you thought, let's go for it?
In terms of what? Sorry.
Is it something you've always wanted to do in, joining a company like this, doing the role that you do now? Is that something you always wanted to do when you were looking at a potential career? Like I know you're 24 now. Let's just say
No,
6 years ago. Is it
no.
is it evolved a lot in that time?
Uh, is this something I've always wanted to do? No. Can I swear on this?
If you want to,
Probably
yeah.
not.
It's all about passion and getting it.
No, just before something slips out for whatever reason. No,
That's right.
listen. I did a degree in geology when I was 18, and then I went over to France and Italy to do a master's in earth dynamics. So
Oh,
if you
wow.
want to say where the crossover is between gaming and applied sciences, there isn't any. Um, but it got to a point where I finished my degree, and essentially I got back home, and I was living at home, and I was applying for jobs left, right, and center, and I just wasn't getting anywhere with it. And it just got to a point where like I had a sort of moment of just like, I guess, reflecting on everything that I'd done, and I was just like, I can't be asked to kind of go back and forth on this for something that truly I probably won't be doing for the rest of my life. Um, and luckily, I had actually met is now our managing director of the company. I had met this individual back when I went to one of the events in London before pre-COVID. Um, and I was like, okay, cool. I've got a contact. Will had also helped me quite massively with this as well to some degree. He had basically got the way in originally in terms of like when he was at uni. And I thought, you know what, screw it. Let me just send a message off and see what happens. And sent a DM off through LinkedIn. Got an interview set up the following week. Went down to London on that specific day, and then the next day I got given a job. And I was like, you know what, like all the debt and stuff that I got in uni, screw it. I'll let it slide. It doesn't matter. I did always think that I would look at trying to get something in gaming at some point. It was just whatever the entry could be into it, because it's just what I love and it's what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the way in. So, in a heartbeat and in an instant, 5 years of what I did before, I was like, I don't care anymore. So, um, it was a random and very improvised decision and spontaneous. But I look back at it and I look where I am now, and to me, like that decision probably changed everything in terms of like the path that I took and where I am now with the things that I am. So,
Mm-hmm.
I won't get too philosophical with it, but there are certain moments in your life when you realize, the decisions you make and whatnot, you can reflect on it and be like, I made the right decision, and this was quite arguably one of the easiest decisions that I'd ever made in my life as far as like the switch.
Mm.
And it's led to a lot more success than I could probably imagine or had thought I would be in the space of a year and a half. So, to me that's a good benchmark to get off. But there's still plenty more to do and there's still a lot to be achieved. So um it's an early start, pretty much.
That's one hell of a start. That's a great story. That, to be honest, yeah, that's great. Going from like geology to where you are now, like an account manager in Carl's Media and Carl's Group.
Yeah, sucked it off.
Yeah, it's crazy. But at the end of the day, when people are like, when they think, oh, I've got a degree in this, I've got to do something in this. Like I did my degree's in sports psychology, but I'd love to go into like what you do in terms of like into esports, into the social media realm. Working for an esports org. I feel like I could add a lot in terms of that sense, but my degree doesn't reflect that. But I feel like with a degree, you earn you bring on a lot of like report writing, and like everything gets a lot better in terms of like your punctuation and grammar and all that stuff, and
Or
I feel like
just
that helps you as well. In terms, go on,
or
what you say?
just I was just saying, like, just do what makes you happy at the end of the
Mm,
day. Like, it's you know what, it is such an easy saying, and it is such a simple saying, and yet so many people overcomplicate it for the wrong reasons. It's literally, there'll be, again, I'm not being naive or ignorant here, but there'll be obviously different circumstances for people in very different environments, etc., that might make it very difficult to do it right. But like, if you are not actively pursuing something that you enjoy and you wake up in the morning and say that you want to do this, whether it's the industry or where you're at, like you're not really positioning yourself in the right mindset to do it.
mhm,
This was a good industry to do it in. And even you're saying about sports psychology, right? Like, the beauty of this industry is that the majority, if not three quarters of like the industry in itself, you don't get a degree in gaming. You don't
mm.
get a degree in video games when you go to uni. You might get a degree in marketing, you might get a degree in business management, but you don't have a qualification that ties directly to gaming. It is very much a passion point that you learn and grow based on the industry, and you apply fundamentals that you learn elsewhere as well with it. But like, I didn't have a lot of the industry knowledge in regards to the way that you would market something, or you would take point A of a strategy to point B. Like, I didn't know that when I first started.
Is
I
that
kind of just,
something you learned when you joined?
yeah, as I went along, you learn and you start building up a lot of these skills. Now, I'm not also saying that the last 5 years of uni have been pointless. There have been so many things out of it that have been extremely useful. With going to different countries, learning different cultures, report writing, talking to people, being social. Like, these are all kind of key fundamental skills that over time you kind of grow and be able to kind of make your own. So there have been a lot of positives like in the last 5 years of uni, but like from an actual industry point of view, like, you don't need a specific degree in gaming to go into it at like an entry level. A lot of people can do, and a lot of people hire for it.
Mm.
As long as you know the gaming world, you know how content creation goes, how the influencer side of things goes. You could probably be looking at landing something fairly easy to get started. It might
Yeah,
not be the best job in the world,
it's a foot in the
but you
door.
can, yeah, it's a foot in the door to kind of evolve and kind of do better and kind of grow along the way. So, and that was my kind of trajectory, right, from when I started to then where I am now. But the opportunity is there. It's just more about like if it's something that you really want to do, then screw it and go and find it out. And then if you don't like it in a year's time, then you can go elsewhere. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's the short story short.
Yeah, so very much, if you've got a degree, that's fantastic. But you can do anything you want. Just go on to Hitmarker, browse for a bit. You might find something in esports. See what happens there.
Exactly.
It's definitely something I've done. I've browsed on it as well. Maybe one day I'll look into it if streaming isn't going to be the route for me, but I'm determined to, make it to the big leagues. I've got a lot of goals that I want to achieve, but that's for another day. Kieran, thank you so much for coming on to chat, mate. We covered a lot of topics, and I feel like your input and advice will do a lot of people, including me. I'm sat here taking mental notes from what you've been saying, to be quite honest with you. So thank you so much for coming on. I really do appreciate it.
No, it's been a pleasure, mate, and I wish we had a little bit more time to talk about more, because I always can ramble on for about 3 hours when I talk about this stuff. So, but maybe one for another time.
100%. I'll get you booked in for another time. We'll get a few people in, then we'll have to get you back in. Don't want to, show too much over to you, but people might get a bit sus about that. But guys, thank you very much for watching. All of Kieran and Horizon stuff will be in the descriptions below, so make sure to check them out. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.
Cheers, guys.